sports, global markets and their focus on AI, and what's happening in streaming, the role of private equity. There's one person on the planet that can master all of those disciplines, probably. It's Steve Pagliuca.
I don't know about that, Ed. That's a high bar.
It is a high bar, but I'm looking across the world of sports properties, and I mean the world, across geographies at the moment. Prices and valuations just continue to hit record highs. Why? What is the fundamental driver at the moment?
Well, I think there's a couple of drivers. One is the voracious appetite for the programming. And
programming, you mean the content that is either streamed or broadcast?
Either streamed or broadcast. And with new technologies, most of these sports have become globalized. So, for example, when I lived in Holland for 3 years in 1977, the most access I could get to sports was get a 3-day-old copy of the Herald Times, and I get the scores from 3 days ago.
Right.
There was no worldwide broadcast, nothing. Now, you can watch any team from any place on the planet, mostly get it on a streaming service or on one of the services. So when we, for example, bought the Celtics in just 2003, you count the fans in hundreds of thousands. Now you count the fans in millions because it goes all over the world. That interest has driven television revenues way up, and that's a driver of the value of these teams, as well as the fact that the teams have become just fantastic assets to own. The values haven't gone down. They're a good place to place money if you don't want to lose money in a pretty volatile world.
You are an owner in football, which Americans would call soccer. You have a minority owner in the NBA. We'll get to all of that. But an interesting case study right now is the Club World Cup and DAZN. Some of these stadiums are empty, but they landed this deal for the streaming of it. What did you make of that? You know, it's an interesting competition as it is.
It was a big deal with a big payout.
Big payout.
Yeah, big payout. I think the deal was $1 billion, deal, and teams can take away $100 million from it. If you get to the finals or the quarterfinals. So, very attractive financially for those teams. And I think this is like a tryout of this format. So I think it'll get better and better, and people understand it more. There was a little confusion. For example, I've talked to people that thought they were buying tickets for the World Cup, not the Club World Cup.
That's an education thing in this marketplace of America.
Yes. Yeah, we're behind. We're catching up. But I think as you do more events like this, there'll be a higher appreciation for what a high-level game these games are.
What role is private equity playing across sports, but any disciplines in sport in particular where they're most active?
Well, they're active in almost all disciplines, and with the prices going up, they're a mechanism to create liquidity and have capital, because when you could buy an NBA team for $100 million or $200 million, individuals could do that. It's harder for individuals to buy teams for $6 billion or $7 billion, and now private equity has filled that gap in a lot of these deals.
The Celtics. You pursued greater ambitions with the Celtics, and in the end, it went to Bill Chisholm's consortium. What were your intentions to participate and expand on the role that you had?
Well, I'm still an investor. This is a two-phase deal. We put together a very, very strong bid, and it didn't work out. So you got to move on, to go forward. And I'm going to support Bill and the group, and many of the group were part of my group. And I've been a lifelong Celtics fan, so I'll turn from a owner to a investor and basically big fan supporter.
You've also been an operator as well, to some extent.
Oh yeah, I was heavily involved, and it was a labor of love, and it was a great 23 years. And we had a fantastic run. We had 2 championships and went to the finals, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
A lot has actually happened since you and I last sat here and talked about that.
Yes.
On the court. There are opportunities out there, though, in the NBA, expansion opportunities.
Absolutely.
You're always looking at something.
Yeah, we have a PAGS group has a sports focus, high tech focus, and a biotech focus. So that's kind of a third of the activities are sports, and we've been very fortunate to win the Europa Cup with Atalanta, 2 NBA championships, and we're looking at many opportunities in the NBA, in other football, soccer franchises, and the NFL.
We're going to talk about football, but Trailblazers?
We have more of an East Coast Europe focus, so for me the Trailblazers would be a bridge too far. Yeah.
Let's talk about football. There's something that I want to ask you, and I mean it academically speaking. Atalanta performed really well on the pitch, does the value of Atalanta come from its brand and the media, or is there value in doing really well in top-tier competition?
Oh, there's definitely value, and it's increased. There's definitely value in doing really well. And so when the Procassis invited us in, we provided capital and actually invested in even more players to be more competitive. And the Procassis have built an incredible academy, I think one of the best in Europe, and we actually have bought 13 more acres of land. We're expanding the academy. It's state of the art already. It's going to be state of the art, and that attracts 452 boys. And very proud of the fact that many of those boys, there's been at least 4 to 6 of them on the Italian national under-23 teams, which is kind of unheard of because there's 19 other teams, and we have a great share of those young players. And we have an under-23 team that actually plays in Series C, and it made it to the, I think, quarterfinals, playing against players that are 30 and 35 years old, and these guys are 19, 20, 21 years old. So the pipeline of the young players, plus our investments, plus our really working with them to bring in modern statistics, has been, and we've been lucky. We've been lucky to have some players really bloom, like Ademola Lookman, who we purchased, and Retegui, who came from scoring 5 goals to score 26 goals this year. And that's to the credit of the Procassi family and how much research they do, how much they know the market, using the statistics and bringing in the modern approach to football.
Some clubs have the model that the academy is the cash cow because you can produce brilliant players and in aggregate sell them in the tens, hundreds of millions of euro. But then you don't necessarily stay consistent on the pitch. How are you going to balance that, Steve?
That's a great question, and that was our number one thing coming in. We wanted to balance that. We don't want to be known as a selling club. We want to be known as a club that's going to play in European competitions, hopefully every year. So we've with the Procassis, we brought the money in to kind of shift the focus. We're obviously not going to, spend to buy $200 million players like they're doing in Saudi now.
Right.
But with our academy, with great scouting, we've proven we can be competitive with the best teams in the world. I mean, we were able to, fortunately, which I still to this day is one of the best days of my life, when I flew into Liverpool in the Europa Cup a year and a half ago. And honestly, I thought I'd have to wear a nose and glasses because Liverpool was on top of the Premier League and playing our team from Milan, and we won 3-0. So I'm still don't know if that really happened or not, but it's in the books. And so we've been able to kind of build a competitive model that relies on some sales when appropriate, but also really reinvest into other players that can really compete at the Champions League level.
What about the stadium as an asset? Top-tier football is also about managing your infrastructure and the assets available to you.
Yeah, at Atalanta, the stadium was a huge asset. And we've completed a renovation of both ends of it with more luxury boxes, more premium approach. We are fortunate in Atalanta that the kind of the number one restaurant in all of Italy, which is a big issue, they actually do the food service in our facility. So you come in and have a world-class meal. You have a luxury box, and that's upgraded the revenues of the team as well. We brought in more sponsors. We just announced that New Balance is going to do the equipment for us, and they've come out with a line of beautiful equipment that's just hitting the shelves right now. And we've got Lette, the water company, as a sponsor. So we've increased sponsorships dramatically. We've really, the stadium is, I would rank it up there with Fenway Park and these iconic stadiums. We've retained all the old features of the Roman features, but put in brand new luxury boxes and parking. So it's a fantastic experience for our fans. It seats about 25,000 and is sold out every game.
Serie A also looks at private equity, as I understand it, media rights in particular. How do you feel about that? And when you speak to your fellow owners in the league, how do they feel about it?
Well, there's been a transition. I think at least 10 clubs out of the 20 now are owned by foreign entities, Americans or other entities like that. And the league is really constantly looking to how to expand the reach. Our international rights, getting more money for the international rights, getting the correct money for the Italian rights. If you look at Serie A, it arguably is second best league of the 5 big leagues out there. And you saw last year the performance was that we had 5 teams in the Champions League because we outperformed even the Premier League, and they had 4. So it's incredible football. I mean, I'm on the edge of my seat every game.
I'm not going to debate this with you because now the French would have something to say about it, whereas previously they weren't even in the conversation.
No, I think they have something to say about it, but I still think there is the more you watch the Serie A product, it's incredible because there almost are no easy games.
And that boosts the valuation of the rights overall?
It'll boost the rights and the fan engagement and all the rest of it. So it's a very competitive league. There are very few 3-0 games. It's 2-1, 1-0, 3-2. Cuomo's doing a great job building that squad up. And they're in incredible venues. You talk about playing in Milan and playing in Lake Como,
right.
Playing in Venice. It's an incredible experience.
Last football question. My colleagues in Europe reported that you looked at Red Star in the Paris region. What happened with that and why another European team?
Well, we're looking at a multi-club strategy.
Which is not unusual.
Not unusual, and that's what we're doing. We only want to buy a club that would have kind of synergy. The theory there is we can bring players in from France and have them try to upgrade Red Star and then maybe send some of them to Atalanta. We have young players in Atalanta that we could send to Red Star to get development instead of send them to another team on loan. So there is a lot of synergy in terms of having the appropriate multi-club strategy. The Red Star one, didn't work out because the financials weren't as good as we thought were purported to be once we dug in.
Yes.
And so we're continuing to look at other opportunities. I don't even think Red Star traded yet.
Right, but you moved on from it.
Yes, we have, yes.
Nonetheless. Steve, you are a seasoned public and private markets investor. Today, for a brief moment, Nvidia hit a $4 trillion market cap. Would you just reflect a little bit on what that reflects to you about where we are in AI, but also as a moment in history in public markets?
Well, it reminds me a lot of the period of kind of 98, 99, 2000, 2001 in the internet.
That's worrying.
Well, no. There were some fits and starts, and there'll be some fits and starts in AI. But I think we're almost past the fits and starts stage. You've got kind of 9 global foundation model companies, 8 or 9 out there, Perplexity, OpenAI. We actually funded a startup from MIT that has modeled a new AI system on a worm's brain, believe it or not. Do you know how many neurons a worm's brain has in it?
Educate me.
305.
Okay.
How many neurons do you think a human brain has in it?
Many, many more.
86 billion.
Right.
And you're smarter than most, so maybe you have 87 billion.
It's kind of you to say.
But these wonderful scientists at MIT came up with this model called the neural network model. And of those 9 companies, they're one of those 9 companies out there that are state of the art. They actually, because they've used the neural network model, they use 80% less GPUs to build the model, and therefore they'll be perfect for edge devices like phones because you don't need the power. And so a ChatGPT model costs about $500 million of GPU to load it. You can do that for 85 or 90% less, and this model can sit on phones, and they're signing deals with edge device companies, as we speak. So it's very exciting, and all the costs are going down for the chips, for the model loading, and as opposed to the internet, which there were some very few big winners. I think there will be a lot of winners here because there's going to be vertical models and foundational models, and the vertical models will be chock full of expertise. So for example, a medical diagnosis model that focuses on disease states and giving you a diagnosis. And some of these models are proving much better than humans because it's a game of elimination. Once you put the right data in, it gives you the diagnosis. Same thing, reading x-rays.
Right.
The AI models reading x-rays are now beating the top humans in the field. So really, we're only still in the early stages. It's going to revolutionize productivity. It's going to have the same impact the internet had 20 years ago, and it's going to be a 20-year run, and that's why Nvidia's value is so high, because they're in the catbird seat of the chips needed to power that revolution.
When I think about the Boston area, I think about both robotics and biotech, and these are both areas that you feel are going to be an opportunity because of what's happening in the field you've just described.
Yeah, definitely. My family foundation funded something called the Pagliuca Harvard Life Lab, which was to give students access to start businesses while they were in graduate school, or anybody from Harvard can start a business there. And already in the 4 years it's been in operation, they've started over 60 businesses, and actually they then get spun out after 18 months to have venture capital funding. Some fail, many.
It's like an incubator.
Yeah, it's like an incubator, but resident in the university. and it gives these students access to lab space that they couldn't get or couldn't afford outside. So it's been a huge success so far. They're building a second one now. I think that's almost complete. And in the circle of life, we've actually invested in one company that came out of there that's now going to a second phase. So, and AI is impacting that as well. We've invested in a company called Seismic that is a machine learning AI program that's going to help build more biotech therapeutics and really get down the curve a lot faster, a lot quicker. So we're in a down market in biotech right now in general, but there is a perfect storm where quantum computing plus the mapping of the genome plus AI on top of that will lead to biotech therapeutics coming out much faster, much cheaper, and we're involved in that whole industry. We've done maybe 35 investments there.